What makes you, you? Imagine unlocking every future you could ever experience with just that one question. How could that change your life? What makes you, you? What if answering that question could make you forever future strong? How could you change the world? These secrets and possibilities revealed themselves when I met a man named Felix Maradiega. Hey, Felix, what makes you, you? Hey, he's the head of an investment firm, so surely he's going to talk about his mastery of economics or markets. Nuh-uh. Felix began his story on a Christmas Eve when he's 13 years old, standing on the bank of a swirling river, alone, without his family. They are 1,800 miles behind him. And somehow he has to find the courage to cross that river without them. Because friends his age that stayed back home were being forced into military service. His mom lost her grocery store to the Sandinistas back in Nicaragua. And she made the toughest decision any mom could make. She sent him away, insisting, even if it was into the unknown, his safety, his future was on the other side of that river. At 13 years old, Felix Maradiega was given asylum into the United States by strangers. But he'd stay here only 18 months. He'd return home as soon as the Contra War was over. Now, I need to pause Felix's story for just a moment and be fully honest with you. As Felix is at this point in his story, I've got feelings swirling inside of me, and they're not about him, they're about me. And I am just not worthy. I mean, what were my toughest choices when I was 13 and 14 years old? How to deal with this zit that kept reappearing right here? Yeah, that's earth-shattering. How to stop being the dorkiest dork of all dorks ever? And probably the toughest choice that I had to face when I was Felix's age was what to do about a letter that I received while I was away at Boy Scout camp. It was from my first girlfriend. And in that envelope wasn't a letter so much. It was an invitation by way of song lyrics by The Doors. Sing along if you know it. Come on, come on, come on now. Touch me, babe. Can't you see that I am not afraid? What was that promise that you made? And how well did little Billy do with this invitation and this tough choice? Let's just say that my first girlfriend and her wife are quite happy together right now. You know, so come on. Here's Bill's tough choices. Here's Felix's tough choices. You know, it's like humbling comparison. But his toughest choice would actually come 2 decades later as the head of that investment firm. Some people approached him for venture capital for their business. And as they're sitting down and working through the deal, Felix begins to realize these are the very same people who persecuted and imprisoned his family 20 years earlier. What an opportunity for sweet, sweet revenge. Yet exacting that revenge was not what was best for Central America or for his soul. So how did Felix make this tough choice about someone else's future? He called upon the kindness that he received from strangers when he needed it most at 13 and 14 years old. He looked at these people who imprisoned his family during that war, and he forgave them And then he gave them the money they needed. Now, I don't know about you. That is not a choice that I could have made. But Felix insists every choice we make about the future, whether it's for ourselves or a stranger or our family or a company or a country, must be an act of love. What makes Felix Felix is that he was born to make the world a better place by living a life of love. And how he found the courage at that moment to do that thing, to forgive and then give, was to call upon previous experiences in his own life where someone did that for him. And it was at that moment I realized Felix was teaching me how we can all be future strong. Within Felix's story, there are two secrets about the future: yours and yours and yours and mine. And the first secret is that the future is personal. Always. Despite all the hyperventilating we hear on social media these days, your future will not be determined by the next disruptive revolution, tech or otherwise. Your future reveals itself only after you make a deeply personal choice about how you will embrace it. And if that choice is to be open to new possibilities, that's the magical moment. At that moment, your past hands you a tool that you can use to leap into your new future. And that tool is the crucible moments from your own life. These are your past experiences that forged or tested how you view the world. Your crucible moments make you future strong long before you will ever call upon them. So the first secret is that each of you has already had in your own life a crucible moment that makes you future strong. The catch, you knew there was going to be a catch, right? There always is. The catch is that this tool works only if you use it to run towards tough choices and not away from them. The second secret within Felix's story is that you already have all the courage you could possibly need for your entire journey. Throughout history, our maps have marked where the future begins. Beyond this point, there be dragons. Fear, risk aversion, playing it safe, they all conspire to shrink our courage and pull us away from our own futures. One example of that I found recently. What I do for a living is I help business leaders make work simpler. And part of that is lots of research. Over 1 million people are all around the globe so far. My team and I, our most recent project was studying the future of work over the next 5 years. The number one finding that we came up with was that currently most business leaders are actually holding back the future for as long as they can because it comes wrapped in risks. We should all be horrified by that because that risk aversion, too much so, and that playing it safe, too much so, is actually impacting either your future or your neighbors or your families or society's future. You can change that. You can slay that dragon. What we found during our interviews is that every single person who said they called upon a crucible moment in their own life to figure out what to do, they said that was what gave them the courage to leap into a new or different or difficult future. So the second secret is that we always need to remember to listen for and hear the heartbeat of our own choices. Your choices are what makes you, you. And they're always beating inside of you, ready to ignite whatever courage you could possibly need. And it is never too late to hear that heartbeat for the very first time. One of my biggest crucible moments in my life was 21 years ago. It was the night my mom died. For 40 minutes, they lost her in the hospital, and she was dying alone without us with her by her side. She was all by her alone. And those 40 minutes, I am never going to get those minutes back with Mom. And after she passed away, and after the grieving process, I had a decision to make. How was I going to think about that moment? How was I going to channel it? And how I chose to remember that moment and leverage it and call upon it and challenge it, channel it for the rest of my life was to help others based on what happened to me. I teach executives now, business leaders, something very important about their people, their culture, and their company. And that is everything they do. Everything you do uses a portion of someone else's life. Everything you do uses a portion of someone else's life. How well are you using those lives? How respectful are you of other people's time and attention? How much of a difference are you making in their life for the amount of time you use? Mom's legacy is to help me teach others how precious life is. Now, I've been calling on that for the last 20 years. That's what makes me future strong, and more importantly, how I teach others how to be future strong. Why I said earlier, it is never, ever too late to hear the heartbeat of your own choices. It was only 1 month ago that I realized when my very first future strong moment was. It occurred when I was 11 years old. Now, I had a typical family, a happy childhood, a typical suburban life in a typical suburban house. Absolutely nothing unusual about it, except for one thing and one place. That was the 1 foot wide broom closet that stood next to the refrigerator in our kitchen. That was the most dreaded place in the house to me, because inside that door, up on its own hook, hung the strap. That was an old belt of my dad's, about 3 inches wide, very well worn on my ass. And whenever I gave my parents hell, which was quite often, whenever I gave my parents hell, Dad would grab me by the collar and force me over his lap. But this time was different. I made a decision. I chose that it was going to be different. I decided I was not going to squirm. I was not going to cry. I was just going to take it. I refused to react. That was the very last time I felt the sting of that strap. And in hindsight, I just realized, like 1 month ago, that was the dawn of very driven, very determined Bill, how I have lived the rest of my life. It was at that moment that I realized I could persevere through any short-term pain or sacrifice if I truly believed in creating a new and different future. Those are some of my future strong stories and Felix's. Now it's your turn, your future. Now, don't rush into that. Be amazing now. Be epic now. Live out loud now. But when that possible new future presents itself to you, no matter how difficult or new or different or disruptive or maybe even short-term painful that new future may seem, remember that you always have with you a tool that you can use to leap into that new future with all the courage and confidence you need. And since the future is personal, the next big thing is you. So, what makes you, you? What makes you future strong? Tell us that story.